27 years later, there's an arrest made. This is a dude who was there. The police knew he had an agreement and ended up talking himself into a jail cell.
It's the guy that goes to the police and says, listen, man, I know about these guys robbing banks. Really? How do you know? I've been driving the getaway car. So you've been robbing banks? No, I'm just driving the getaway car. No. I'm like, let me explain conspiracy to you while I slip these handcuffs on you.
I don't know if you've heard anything about the Tupac death investigation. They raided in Las Vegas, what was it, over the summer, they raided this dude, Keefe D, his house in connection to the Tupac shooting.
Right.
If you don't know the backstory.
Tell me the backstory.
Real quick. So Keefe D got in trouble for drugs or something in 2008, and he made a Profer agreement. Right? You know what that is. I was just kind of learning.
Yeah, it's a profers. You basically explain what you did, and it's covered under whatever deal you've got.
Yeah, but it's not immunity, right? That's a completely different thing, because it's just they can't use what you said against you within those confines.
Right. Typically, what a proffer has, though, it will typically exclude espionage and violence. Like if you come in and say that, if you come in and say that, I murdered somebody, or if you come in and say that I stole government secrets or something, typically it typically excludes those types of admissions, not omissions.
So his proffer was detailing the murder of Tupac.
Okay. So he probably didn't. So, did he admit during the proffer that he murdered him? Or did he just kind of say there, he didn't do it, but he still put himself there?
He put himself, I forget, in the front seat of the car. There were 4 people in the car. He detailed who it was. He detailed that he had the gun that he gave to, his nephew that had shot Tupac. All the others were
murder.
What? Yeah, exactly.
Accessory to murder. Right. Okay.
So I guess that he was protected from being charged with that, right?
Okay.
Then he gets out of prison, I forget, 2014, or this is when he writes his book, 2014, Tales of a Compton Street Legend, or whatever the book is named. And in it, because this is being reposted all over social media, it's really being documented on YouTube, that he details essentially the Profer agreement, again, in his book, where this is not protected.
Right.
They weren't like, oh, if you ever write a book and I always thought it was funny because it's like OJ kind of did the same thing, but OJ did it in a fashion where he was like, if I was there, maybe this is how it would have gone down. Because it wasn't his whole book like, if I had committed this crime, I forget the title, but it was something like
a
hypothetical. So he never once says I was there.
Search for the real killer.
What's that?
Shortest book ever written.
Was that the title?
I don't know what it was.
No, it was something where you're like, oh my God. And he basically details everything, but saying it in not third person, but kind of this hypothetical of if I had been there that night, and if Tito had heard me, and so he did it in this really almost clever way. You hate to say it, but to profit off it. This dude, Keefe D, did not do that. And in fact, he went on many different YouTube channels.
Right.
Art of Dialogue, which is a huge one. VladTV, which is even big. Some of the biggest YouTubers. And
I was on Vlad. I went on Vlad.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so you and Keefe D got a 6 degree of separation thing going.
Sounds like 1 degree of separation.
Or no degrees. Probably the next one in. But so he went on Vlad and you can look all this up. He's talking about Tupac. In fact, my feed is all shorts of the times he talked about the Tupac murder and just weird stuff. No regret. Very much cold to the fact that this was a beloved icon who spoke for the people. The history of his family is, I can't say enough good things. I love Tupac. And he went on and just ran his mouth for, what has it been, since 2014? Even in the book, if you read the excerpts, he talks about locking eyes with Suge Knight. You can't get more specific. He was I looked in Suge's eyes and 2 bowls locking horns, the two Rams locking horns. You know, Suge had that look like, oh no, it's going down. So it's very specific, and you're wondering, like, is he dumb or is he like, did the ego?
Yeah, he feels like he feels like he's covered,
Right?
Yeah.
But you would figure he must have talked to a lawyer at some point.
Maybe.
Like, he obviously didn't because of what has happened.
You would be shocked how many of these idiots talk to their friends. So your friend that works at Walmart told you this is how it works. And then they'll go around telling people this is how it works. Why do you think that? Oh, I know. How do you know? Because my friend, Jimmy that works at Walmart told me. And is Jimmy got a license in law? Was he a prosecutor? Was he?
Nope.
How does he know? Well, he's smart. Well, maybe.
No, it's the WebMD. It's the diagnosing yourself
right
through WebMD of the law realm or the criminal court. So essentially, he has done all this talking up until this summer. And I think what sparked it, or what people are saying, is Tupac's biological father went on, I forget, one of the YouTube channels, and basically said, like, the cops have known who has done this since the killing. They've never done anything, and they won't, because, Tupac shot off-duty police officers. His family was Black Panthers, and there's just this long history where they're like, the cops don't care. They know. And then Keefe D's house gets raided over the summer. And then, what was it? Last week, it was very recent. They arrest him in connection with the shooting, the murder of Tupac. And he's being held without bail in Las Vegas. I guess in Nevada, they can hold you if it's a murder charge. They can request no bail there's some kind of violent crime. I forget what the specifics are. Again, I don't want to be one of those dudes that claims I know the law.
Right. So either way, he's locked up and he doesn't have bail.
Yep. And everyone's talking about how, or at least YouTube is kind of broken down from the cops. Greg Kading, I think that's his name. There's another police officer, the chief or the sergeant that was on the bike that held Tupac. Have you heard about Tupac's final words?
No.
Okay, so when Suge crashed, or not crashed the car.
What was the dispute?
They went to Vegas to the Tyson fight, right? The Tyson fight, I guess, went around. And Tyson, there's a documentary on Hulu called Dear Mama, which is great because they talk to all the people closest to Pac. They even have his mom before she passed, a lot of footage. They talk to his aunt, and they really go through this meticulously where you can kind of feel like that inner circle. And Tyson talks about how the fight went so quick that once you're in that atmosphere, and if you've ever been to a UFC fight, there's electricity, it's testosterone flowing. So they get out of the fight that ended too soon. And you see the video of Tupac when he's leaving. He's, being very typical Tupac, and talking. Tyson knocked him out, this, that, the other thing. And when they're in the casino, they point out that there's the dude, Orlando Anderson, that tried to steal the Death Row Medallion off one of their crew's neck. And Tupac wasn't going to let that happen, even though he, at that point, he's Tupac, don't get involved. There's other people that can do that stuff.
Right.
And he goes over and they jump him, and there's the infamous security footage of, Pac doing whatever in the fight. It was really, really just didn't need to happen. But you feel like fate ordained this. So, of course, this guy, Orlando Anderson, is a Southside Crip, I believe. He's tied. It becomes a gang thing very quickly. And backstory to that, the reason he was trying to take the Death Row Medallion, allegedly, let me just say that, allegedly, is they said Puff Daddy, P. Diddy, whatever he goes by now, was the one who said, 10 grand to whoever can get me a Death Row Medallion. So that's kind of where the East Coast, West Coast thing also gets inflated a little bit because P. Diddy had some beef with whatever. So after that fight, Tupac and them jump this gang-related member. They leave. There's a lot more to the story, too. That's why I highly encourage, because it's just a fascinating, really sad tragedy that happened, but there's so many moving parts to it. Like he didn't have his security. He didn't have his bulletproof vest on. You see that infamous last photo of Tupac and Suge in the car before they leave. That was like minutes before he was killed. And when they leave, they just so happen to pull up next to the, that crew of gang members where Keefe D is in the front seat. He said this. This is not alleged anymore. He's put it in writing. He's been on YouTube. Or whether Keefe D in his car found Pac. I don't know how it happened, but they end up next to each other. Shots ring out. Suge speeds away, and the rest is, unfortunately, hip-hop history, where Pac is shot up, I forget how many times. A lot, though. And the story with the chief of police who was on a bike that night, patrolling, there's a Tyson fight, so he's got to be very accessible, mobile, right. So he's not in the car because Vegas Strip is just weird. You can't get around. He rides up very unaware of what just happened, because I guess they had made it to the Strip at this point, and he pulls up with his gun. Everybody get out. Everybody gets out of the car, but Pac, not knowing that Pac was shot, doesn't get out of the car. So he approaches the car, opens the door, and I guess Pac kind of, falls to the ground, and the chief goes to pick him up, and he's like, hey, who did this to you? And he tells this story on YouTube. That's why it's like so compelling, because you're listening to a guy who had the final moments speaking with Pac. And when he goes, who did this to you? He describes it so vividly. He's like, I could tell Pac was trying to gather his last breath. He's like gurgling. There's blood everywhere. He's shot up really bad. And I'm holding him saying, who did this to you? Who shot you? And Pac gets the last breath and goes, F you. And he said, then his eyes rolled back and he was just unconscious. So Pac was just real to the end, But everybody kind of knew, once the chips fell where they were.
Right.
And then you get to today where 27 years later, there's an arrest made. And it came from, that's why I thought it was fascinating to ask you your thoughts, because this is a dude who was there. The police knew, he had an agreement, and ended up talking himself into a jail cell, which I don't know what evidence they have and how much they'll use of YouTube and his book against him. But he's 60 years old. This could end up, for him being a life sentence, correct?
I'm sure.
So
possibly if he's been saying like he gave him the gun, like he obviously knew he was going to fire the gun and shoot Tupac. Like if he's saying, look, like I was holding the gun because, for whatever reason, or I handed him my gun, or he asked me for a gun, I gave it to him. We saw Tupac. We knew that, like that's going to be, conspiracy to commit murder. You're definitely in the conspiracy. So, you can get as much time as the guy who actually pulled the trigger. But let's say even if he pleads guilty to 20 years or, whatever it is, like you're dying. There's about a 95% chance you're dying in prison because you've got to rely on medical to keep you alive.
And what do you think, so will they be able to this was my question, because on YouTube, technically you can get away. It's just like Fox News, right? They technically, when you look it up, they claim to be an entertainment organization. That's how they get away with saying certain things under the guise of Fox News.
Right.
So they're not held liable. I forget there was like some case where somebody was suing them to be held liable, and they were like, no, we're entertainment. Like these are opinion pieces. They're not true news. Look into this. It's fascinating at how they can position their media coverage of things as entertainment. So you're not truly supposed to be reporting on facts. It's wild, and being in the media for so long, you also have to be very careful of like how, that's why I'll always say like allegedly or whatever, because you don't want it to come back. But
you're saying entertainment, you're more liable, if you're saying it's news and you say, I'm just presenting the news. I'm just presenting.
You're not, what I mean?
Right. They're saying
it's a very skewed, like if that was the news, there are very easily disprovable things, or the way they omit. It's almost like lying by omittance, where it's like you just take this small segment and kind of present it as a fact. So That's why with entertainment, if you do that, just like my YouTube channel, it's like satire and sarcasm, you can kind of go anywhere. that YouTube allows. They'll rip whatever they want off YouTube. But that's why I was wondering with this dude, Keefe D, is that going to be, could he even try that as an argument? I guess not, because he wrote it in a book, but all these interviews, could he try to?
If they present it, look, whatever they feel comfortable presenting to a jury, right? You present to a jury that he wrote this. I got an interview of him saying this. I've got, we've got the footage. We've got the chief of police saying this. We've got, all these bystanders saying this. They probably have one or two other people saying that he told them this. He was drinking one night, told me this. He told his cellie stands up and says, man, he admitted it to me. He told me this. Like, these guys don't do things like this and not tell 50 people, right? Like,
go on YouTube and tell 1 million.
Right. So it's like, this is something that's known. And so for him to then turn around and say, hey, this was just entertainment. I was just saying it so that Vlad would pay me $1,000 to come on his show and tell the story. I was just doing it for entertainment. It's certainly, okay, that's fine. I get it. And I understand that. But you understand it was presented as being true. Right. So we're going to charge you, and you can tell the jury that and explain that to the jury, and maybe the jury believes you.
Yeah.
Well, but we present everything.
The nail in the coffin, though, is like his book, I believe, is an autobiography. I think he published it himself. You know what I mean? Like, he was like, these are my stories. This is my life.
Right.
You can't wiggle out of that one as like, no, it's meant to be entertainment. That's why I thought when OJ did it, it was very clever, as heinous as it was, that he presented it in this like fairy tale of like how I would imagine this went down. And then it's like find details of, it's specifically what happened. But
yeah, it's funny because I'll do that sometimes in an article. I'll say something like, look, like I don't know that this is what happened, but based on everything that I've read, this is how I imagine it happened. Yeah. And then I'll do, and I'll throw one or two, like, I don't get too explicit. Like, you can only say so much. Like, if you say, I can imagine that Blaine stepped into the first class cabin, ordered his favorite drink, and I know what his favorite drink was, wearing one of his famous, Buchachi suits or whatever his favorite suit was, and flew to Perth and and by the time he got off the plane, he'd been indicted. All of that's kind of magical, right? Like, it's like I'm painting a scene based on things that I know, but nobody told me that's what happened. Like, I don't know he was wearing that suit. I don't know that he ordered that drink. You know what I'm saying? But I can say that based on the things that I know about him, this is probably how it went down.
Well, and that's like the clever way to present.
Right. Paint something. But this guy is not saying that. This guy is saying, I got in the car.
Well, he's like detailing what the look Suge gave him. That's where I'm like, bro, these are like when you watch maybe he's never seen a crime drama show or any documentary on YouTube, because they're like, oh, the suspect knew details nobody else knew. And I'm like, bro, you're printing them in a book and publishing it for the world to read, So that's, I don't know. I think that was like the nail that couldn't I don't know. We'll see, right? Because he's going to go to court. They're holding him. They already had, I don't understand with the grand jury thing. They already had a grand jury because they were listing some of the people that were speaking to the grand jury. So that was just to present this so they could arrest him, correct? Or
yeah, that's just to say, is there even enough evidence for us to bring the charges? It's very unlikely that after a grand jury has been convened and agreed that there is enough evidence to bring the charges, that they would drop the charges. At this point, they're going to move forward. You're either going to take a plea or we're going to move forward and go through, because they almost never, if a grand jury was shown the evidence and says, I think this is probably enough to convict them, then they're going to go through a trial at this point. It's like a 99.99% chance they're going to go, unless something super compelling, unless his lawyer comes in and says, listen, bro, here's his alibi. He wasn't there. We have him here. This is what, and it would have to be like super, and they say, look, obviously he was lying because we've got this alibi. He was taking money out of his ATM. We've got photos of him. We've got this. He's just a pathological liar. Like, if unless that happened, which isn't the case in this, no, I understand, but I'm saying, unless they came forward and presented some overwhelming evidence that they would be like, wow, we can't go to trial. There's no way he's going to present this evidence. And it's not like his mom's going to say he was at home watching the game, watching the fight with her, so he couldn't have done it. that's not, they're going to be like, yeah, okay, well, mom can come say that on the stand then.
Well, they already had the first hearing or something about bail, and I guess his lawyer didn't even show up. They were like, "Oh, it was last minute, so it couldn't show." But I thought, like, that's a little telling. This is a huge. I don't know how you could miss that this is coming up. Unless you're living under a rock, and for his lawyer to not even be there, I was like, "Oh man, we might see somebody quit from this case." Maybe not. You should watch because what is it? Law and Crime YouTube channel. They're playing a lot of this stuff. I don't know if it's real time or when they do a press conference. I wish Sheriff Grady would. Can they send him out to do? Is that out of his?
Pull a picture of him out. This guy, you're not gonna believe what this guy.
They should be able to. I don't know if it's like out of his district or authority, but
on it.
To be able to rent him out so he could do all the press conferences because that dude is ruthless.
We wish all criminals were this stupid. I would love each criminal out there that's done something this stupid to write a book and put it on Amazon.
You know what he would do? That sheriff would read the excerpt from his book to start that. That would be so hilarious. Oh, well, so the Law and Crime Network is, basically playing everything that's going on. They are very in rhythm, in step with anything that's being broadcast on this Tupac thing. Probably because it's, all of the viral trending stuff. But you should, I don't know if they'll allow cameras in the court or, how that goes from state to state. You should do a live stream and watch that thing go down, break down these moves. And especially with the stupidity of, this evidence is going to be hilarious, right? If they're bringing in YouTube excerpts, if they're playing clips from VladTV and they're like, here is the evidence. It's an interview. It's a part from his book. I mean, is that not going to be hilarious? Has there ever been a case that has gone down like this where YouTube is the biggest?
You know what's so funny about that is that there's tons of guys that will say Vlad is a fucking CI or Vlad is the police. They always say that because apparently people have gone on his channel before and they've been indicted. They'll go on and start talking about some murder or being somewhere and they get indicted. They're a big guy.
Are you serious?
Oh, absolutely. So this isn't gonna. So for Vlad, this is not good at all. There's already a whole slew of people that can't stand him because they're like, Vlad be the police, man. Vlad's the police. He been, they'll say it in the comments and all kinds of stuff. Oh, yeah.
Well, you better believe what I'm doing later is writing that in the comments. I can't believe that this has happened before and people still, maybe they have no idea what his channel is, but the fact that they're still going on there and talking to him like he's Oprah is incredible.
You should read the comments on my Vlad comments.
I want to so bad though.
They're vicious. These guys did not like some of them were like, this guy's a genius, and the other ones just hated my guts.
Yeah, but I guarantee you, if you click on any of their bios, they got one subscriber, been a YouTuber for 10 years, and they have, million comments, no videos.
Listen,
it's easy.
If you're watching, you're still a fan.
Yeah, that's true. Whether they hate you or love you.
Hate me or love me, as long as you're watching.
As long as you leave a like, subscribe, hit the little bell right in the corner, right under here. Make sure. Hey, that's the truth. I'm telling you, if some people blow you off for interviews and that court case is going on, you should be live streaming, have the little thing in the corner and just commenting, because this is going to be, outside of it, finally bringing some justice and some closure to a 27-year-old case that I think everybody in the world is at least somewhat knowledgeable. You know what I mean? You're aware that the way Tupac's life ended. But the fact that the last dude living in that car talked his way into a jail. I mean, this dude was living free, doing interviews, incriminating himself, but just living off, I'm guessing, doing interviews. I don't think he had a job. He wasn't working down at the Kroger or whatever they got in Vegas. He wasn't bagging your groceries. This dude was, living a life. And if you've seen the footage when they did the raid, he had a nice hot, it's confusing. I don't know why he would do it, but here we are.
Nah, probably just thought it's so old. Nobody cares. They're not going to put it together. It doesn't matter. It doesn't. And probably thought, say this all the time. It's the guy that goes to the police and says, listen, man, I know about these guys robbing banks. Really? How do you know? I've been driving the getaway car. They're like, so you've been robbing banks? No, I'm just driving the getaway car. No.
I'm like,
let me explain conspiracy to you while I slip these handcuffs on you.
Yeah, it is wild. We got to figure out what's the term for like the WebMD diagnosis for criminals that think, well, my buddy says that you can't get in trouble because X, Y, Z.
Yeah.
Probably what it was.
I have so many people that tell me that will tell me about prison. No, you can get parole. Though they parole you after doing 30% of your time. You don't know what you're talking about. It's like, wait a second, bro. I understand that you're stocking shelves somewhere. And I get it. God bless you. Like middle class America. Like, thank you for doing your part. You're what makes this country run. I'm not knocking you, but if I need someone to drive a forklift, like, you're my guy. But just because you watched a lot of Law and Order,
yeah.
Guess what? There is no parole in the federal system. Now, prior to 1986, after doing 1/3 your time in prison, you were eligible for parole. You would go in front of the parole board, and they would say, okay, you have done 3 years on a 9-year sentence. So you're eligible for parole, and you would plead your case, and they would say, okay, you've done a bunch of programming. You've got a wife and kid out there. We know you messed up. You have no criminal history. We're going to give you parole. And they put you on parole. But after 1986, there is no federal parole. So these guys that say, oh, we got 10 years. Well, in a couple of years, they'll put him on parole. No, he went in the federal system. Now, some states still have parole system. There's difference between the state systems. Every single system is different. Every single state system is different. And the federal system. So people don't realize that. They'll be like, oh, you got to do 90% of your time for violent crimes. This guy's lying. No. Now, maybe if you're in Nevada, you see what I'm saying? Like maybe in your state, that's how it works. Or maybe if you're in this state, maybe if you're on Rhode Island, you do, 2/5 of your time. But this guy went to the federal system, or this guy was in Georgia, or this guy was like people. And listen, they'll argue with you. They'll call you a piece of shit liar. You're a scumbag. This guy's a liar. You can't believe anything he says. And it's like, bro, look at how angry you are. Right. Like, you really think that you know something because your older brother went to jail for 18 months and he knows how it works. You might want to ask him, how does it work in the federal system? Or, hey, Bubba, I know you did state time in Ohio. What about Florida? He'll probably say, oh, I don't know how it works in Florida.
Yeah.
And they'll be like, I spent 2 hours arguing with someone on Cox's channel.
You can't do it. Don't do it.
But there's people that do that, though. They're because they had a 10-minute conversation with somebody. Now they're an expert.
Or, I'm telling you, that's the other thing that's misleading about YouTube. How many people are doing these, I don't want to say true crime, but like when you were saying you had got out, and true crime has always been a hit since podcast existed day one.
Right. Yeah.
What I noticed started that fad was like these NPR people that, like they came from this like totally different background, but they wanted to examine these cases, and they maybe talk to secondhand knowledgeable people, and that's really what the true crime was. Or they were ripping it from the headlines and just kind of reading as they went. So that false illusion of like people who think or maybe Googled something that they knew how it worked, differing from, you're like, no, listen, I lived it and I know people who lived it, and this is, actually how it's working. Because that 1986, you should be doing videos like that, breaking down the laws. That's important stuff, man.
I'm trying to make money, not do important stuff. So what's it, that Danny Masterson?
Yeah.
You know how many guys are out there, prison guys, talking about how like, he'll get smashed and he's this and he's gonna this and he's gonna that. And all of that is true. Like in a state prison in California, he's probably going to have a hard time, or they're going to put him in protective custody.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he'll still have a hard time. But Eventually, they'll put money on some guy's books and they'll protect him and he'll be okay. But guys like I would talk if I'll do TikToks or something, they'll take a little excerpt out of a 2-hour interview. They'll take like a 1-minute excerpt, and guys will say, and I'll talk about, I'm going to call them SOs, the SOs in prison, right? Or, the chomos, in prison, and how, this guy said this, that's a lie because they don't mix with other people, and this guy's a piece of garbage, he's flying, and it's like, no. I was in most low security camps or low security prisons in federal prison. About 40 to 50% of the people that are there have SO charges. And there's so many of them that the inmates will restrict them a little bit, but not completely. Like a lot of inmates will be like, look, you can't watch TV. You can't be in the TV room.
They set the boundaries. Yeah.
They'll try. But what happens is if you have 2,000 people and 1,000 of them or 800 are SOs, and one day they say, hey, we're going to go walk the track.
What are you going to do?
First of all, you guys are really, think about it, all these guys are segregated. You've got like the blacks will have 5 different gangs. The whites will have 2 gangs. The Hispanics will have, 1 gang. It's like it breaks it up. It's like, not, you guys can't even get together, really. You can't really do anything. We're at a low. Most of you guys are close to home. Most of you guys do not want to go anywhere.
Yeah.
So they'll just let them do what they kind of like, they'll bitch and moan. They'll call them names, but they won't really do anything. If you say that, there will be guys in the comment section who will be calling me a liar, and that's not true. And why? Because your cousin went to prison in Arizona? Like, he went to an Arizona state prison. He wasn't a federal prison. It wasn't like, they're all different.
It's weird.
But people dig in.
Because I didn't realize what time it was. I get a wrap. But on that, because you were just talking about the division in the prisons, and I know you always say, what is it? We might have the numbers, but they got
they got the prisons and the guns and the barbed wire.
Why do you think they love having those gangs in the prisons? Because if they're so busy divided, fighting against each other, it's the same thing like what you were just describing. If these gangs could form some kind of rainbow coalition like the Black Panthers wanted back in the 70s, where they said, doesn't matter your color, we want everybody to join together because then you really have the numbers. I mean, the guards quickly become outnumbered and they can make some demands or movements. They need a prisoner organization, like a union, to get their demands met,
That's the moment somebody tries to organize, they get shipped. Trust me, they're not stupid. They're monitoring everything. Look, it's the same thing with TVs. They'll never take TVs out of prison. I'll hear people, they should take TVs out of prison. They should listen, bro. Those TVs are babysitters. The moment they shut the TVs off and they say, you guys lost the TVs for the next week, it lasts about 3 days. And then the cops are like, we're giving you the TVs back. You guys have been good. We're going to be, no, the truth is now we're a problem.
Yeah.
Now there's no babysitter for us to sit there and just stare at the box.
Now you got the numbers, the power.
Yeah. They don't like that.